welcome to another Building Your Business. Today's Building Your Business is introducing thermography inspections to your commercial property inspections. And we're lucky enough today to have Drew Thacker with us. Welcome, Drew.
Thank you very much, Rob. It's a pleasure to be here.
Drew, where are you located?
We're in the greater Dallas-Fort Worth area. I'm located in Colleyville, but I service an area of about 200 miles radius, depending on who the client is and whether it's commercial inspection or residential.
So if somebody dangles a carrot and it looks like dead presidents, you're gonna hop in your car and run.
Typically, I don't turn anybody down, especially if it's with realtors that I've been working with the last 10 years or so. I tend to jump through the hoop for them and make sure their clients are serviced.
So let's begin a little bit with your background, Drew. Tell us a little bit about you and why thermography is such a passion for you.
Yeah, I think it's, I grew up in California during the space program, and I went to school and became an aeronautical engineer and went to work for Rockwell on the Apollo program. So you get an idea of where all this white hair came from, because I'm old, but technology has always been a cornerstone of my life, and everything I've done has always revolved around it. I worked for General Dynamics for 21 years, and then I went to work at Northrop and Lockheed on the B-2 stealth bomber program. So bombs and bullets have been in my background, and I did do quite a bit of work for them in stealth technology, as well as FLIR, which is forward-looking infrared for weapon systems, and can't really get into it, but detection of things that otherwise you wouldn't see.
Mm-hmm.
So when I decided to retire, went to Vail, Colorado, was a ski instructor for 14 years, and people up there knew I was an engineer and started asking me about building decks and roofs in the snow load country. And one thing led to another, decided to get my license. And then about 10 or 12 years ago, we moved back down here to Dallas to take care of my wife's mother and kind of provide hospice care for her. So been with Trek ever since, and enjoy it. And I've made thermography a key cornerstone of my inspection practice, both in commercial as well as residential.
And because we're the commercial arm of the inspection world, I want to focus on that and primarily in what my research of what you do. Your passion really lies in adding thermography as preventative, diagnostic, and everything else as it goes with commercial inspection. So let's kind of talk about that. What are the basic systems that thermography benefits a commercial inspector?
Well, I think there's two prongs to this: benefiting your client and benefiting the inspector. Obviously, adding thermography to your toolkit adds an entire new dimension to your into your inspection practice. And it gives the client a lot more confidence in your ability to be able to speak as an authority with issues that are early prevention for him, and also for detecting things that other contractors may come along and want to sell him something that he really doesn't need that much of. And I in particular look at roofs, because most roof contractors are up there doing core samples, and they're not nearly as efficient or effective as a thermographic survey of that roof is.
Mm-hmm.
So using thermography, whether like my tools, I use advanced infrared with a drone to survey roofs, but I also use handheld cameras to do detailed up close inspections. But what they do for you is allow you to do mapping of a surface so that you don't have to tear up the entire roof to fix a problem. So you're saving your client money, you're adding to your credibility, and you're going to get a lot more referrals, because people like to save money, but they also like to be shown the proof that you know what you're talking about. And an infrared survey map is just that. It's irrefutable when you put it in front of a client to show him these are the areas where you've got moisture intrusion underneath the laminates, especially with TPO, thermographic olefin
Mhm.
roof. And I think that uh, clients really appreciate your knowledge base in that area. So from me and what I try to deliver to my clients, I start every inspection with a thermographic review of the entire building, the roof, the walls, the windows, to see if there's any energy leaks and also if there's any moisture intrusion into areas that could cause damage.
So, what kind of tool? Yeah, you mentioned drone. So let's start with the drone. So you have thermography mounted on your drone.
That is correct. I started off using the DJI Enterprise Advanced 2 drone, which has a 640 resolution infrared camera on it, as well as high res visual 4K plus. And I think that it's really important to be able to compare both images because let's face it, most people they have the misimpression that infrared is like X-ray vision. You're not seeing it, you're not seeing through the walls or into the roof. What you're seeing is differential in energy that's being released because of reflected energy from heat, but it does a very precise job of mapping out those areas that have issues. In addition to that, I use FLIR cameras, I use Fortrix cameras. Um, they all have a specialized use. When I'm doing electrical panels for, say, a commercial contractor that's got a machine shop or something, that takes a different type of camera than, let's say, if I'm doing floor moisture intrusion under tile or something like that. One, you can get away with low resolution. The other, you need very precise resolution. So I don't want everybody to run out there and think you got to go spend $8,000 or $10,000 on a camera. You can get a good camera between $300 and $600 that'll get you started. But I will say, practice, practice, practice. You need to take hundreds of, I probably have taken thousands of thermographic images to learn the subtleties, like hundreds and hundreds of panel photos of service panels and capacitors on motors and just different kinds of things so that I start to recognize those areas that have problems because of overheating and those areas where you can say, yeah, it's a little warm, but this thing can go, another couple of years without having replacement. And those are the things where you add value to a client. And from the standpoint of CCPIA, obviously, with these kind of tools and this kind of experience, we can charge more for what we do because
Mhm.
we add value. I'll give you an example. I just did a 268,000 square foot roof for a distribution center, and they were entertaining estimates to do half replacement, full replacement. I saved them about $2.5 million because we isolated it to 4 areas and the repairs were about $65,000 total. So you really have to understand thermography. There's some great training courses out there, but there is no substitute for practice and firsthand knowledge. So you can go get level 1, level 2, level 3 training,
Mhm.
but that is not going to prepare you to walk into a situation where you don't have the experience to know how to interpret the data. So keep going to training classes, read everything you can, and take thousands of images so that you know what you're looking at, and always use your other tools like your infrared thermometers and things like that so you can compare what you're seeing from your infrared imaging with real analog data or digital data from other devices.
That's interesting. You say that. So I mean, getting your level 1, 2, or 3 is great, but if you don't know your tool, if you don't know the tools you're working with, their capacity, what they read, then it really doesn't make a hill of beans difference. Then, correct?
Well, I don't want to be so absolute, but let's put it this way. When you start using these tools, a client is trusting you to know what you're talking about. So
Mhm.
if you're in doubt, never guess. Go
Right.
get somebody, call somebody that's got experience. I mean, Internachi does a great job because the group that I'm in for residential, I do a lot of training in there. I show them images all the time. They want to see, how you can interpret an electrical panel more efficiently and things like that. So rely on those resources, rely on people with experience. If you're in doubt, show it to somebody with experience so that they can help you do the
Mhm.
interpretation. The last thing you want to do is make a pronouncement about something and it's inaccurate. The other
Right.
thing, it's really important to get the digital data captured with those images. You need to know what those temperature readings are in those different zones that you're looking at. So when you get ready to go start doing larger commercial buildings, and I do a lot of restaurants and hospitals and medical clinics, things like that, you really have to have some hands-on knowledge, get somebody to mentor you, to go through it a few times, or to be with you so they can help you interpret the data correctly. But once you start getting familiar with it, your clients just light up over this kind of stuff. I can tell you, I've gotten more commercial clients from referrals than I ever have from marketing directly because people say, well, where'd you get that image? Well, that's what Ariel did for me. And
Mhm.
so it tends to keep coming back to you. And over the last 10 years, I built the practice to where commercial work is about 85% of what I do now. I still do
Mhm.
residential because you do run into, these high-end homes that they have flat roofs or they have roll-up roofs or they have TPO up there. Usually it's TPO 30, the cheaper fabrics. But when I do those surveys, I'll tell you, most of the time I find poor weldments along the seams and around high vac equipment, things like that on the roof. And that's where the leaks emanate from.
Sure. Sure. Now, beyond roofs, you mentioned electric. You very touched on HVAC, but let's concentrate on electric for a moment. I know in my distance past, gosh, it's probably been 15 years since I did a project. I did I did a hospital that had 6,500 panels, and I did a thermographic scan on all the panels and switchgear. Uh, can you talk a little bit about some of those opportunities inspectors have? Because I'm sure you get called on those as well.
You do, and hospitals and medical buildings and dental offices, they use some specialized equipment like MRIs, they use PET scans, they use high energy X-ray. And so you're going to run into service panels of 1200 amps, 6,000 watts, that kind of thing. So as inspectors and non-licensed electrician, I'm not licensed as an electrician.
Mm,
When I run into that kind of high voltage, I don't take those panel covers off. It's not like
mm.
residential where you pop it off and you're dealing with 200 amps. When you start getting into this high voltage and high amperage equipment, thermography really works for you because you can look at the panel and you can see if you're having overheating. If you've got breakers in that panel that are exceeding 140 degrees F, you're ready to call in an electrician. Those panels, your breakers, even 120 amp, 200 amp breakers should be in the 100, 110 Fahrenheit range. You shouldn't be running into things that are exceeding 140, 145 degrees. If you are, it sounds like a loose connection for the most part, or it could just be a bad breaker about to go. But that's when you want a licensed commercial electrician to come
Sure.
in and be your second because we don't want to touch those panels. The other thing I look at a lot is in metalworking shops and machine shops, I do a lot of surveys on motors. And the windings on motors, you can tell very quickly if they're starting to overheat, which tells you that that motor needs a new winding. You need to overhaul the motor. And if you catch these motors early enough, you don't have fusing, so you don't burn out the windings. You can replace them. That motor goes back online at about a third of the cost if it fused and you actually
Mhm.
ruined the motor. So, so those are a couple examples. The other things I look at is in machine shops, I look at spindle speeds. And a lot of times people are, you talk about speeds and feeds. Speed is how fast the spindle's turning, and the feed is how fast it's being shoved into the material. If you're dealing with aluminum or steel or titanium or something like that, they all have different temperature profiles that you can look at with your camera. Now, that requires you going in and changing your temperature settings. So the average thermography camera, like a FLIR camera, I can't remember the model number. I think mine's a number 8, but it's typically set from minus 30 to 600 degrees Fahrenheit, right? But
Mhm.
if you're looking at a machining operation, you may have to dial that up to 1200 degrees Fahrenheit or give it a wider berth so that you are getting accurate data from it. I don't do a lot of that. Most of my work with commercial is looking at panels. And by the
Mhm.
way, Rob, you win. I've never ever come close to 6,500 panels. That must have taken you 6 months to write it up.
It was 14 buildings, and we ran a 24-hour shift with 3 guys.
Yeah,
Each guy
that's
took an 8-hour
still
shift.
a lot of report writing, a lot of
Yeah.
photos.
Yeah, it was
But
a project, and it was so long ago that I leased a piece of equipment special just for that project because I needed the higher res and the higher capacity versus my E4 or my E6 could handle.
you bring up a good point right there, and I'd like to put that out to your audience that you don't need to go out and buy $35,000 cameras. You can rent them from FLIR, you can rent them from other places. Uh, excuse me. And for 3 or 4 days worth of use, you're talking a couple $100. It's not very
Yep.
much. So don't think you have to own, this $25,000 rig because you won't use it enough to justify the cost of it. It's like drones. There's some drones like you need arcade, you need different kinds of geodetic sensing so that they know exactly how far they are from, say, a high tension electric line
Mhm.
on, a tower that's running 13,000 kVAR, um, or you're getting close to well, I guess transformers they're kind of all over the map, but transformers usually can be viewed from about 20 feet away very safely by a drone. But there are some high voltage ones that'll fry your drone if you get too close to it, and
Mhm.
your drone will just fall out of the sky. And that's a very expensive failure when you have an $8,000 drone that crashes and destroys a $4,000 camera. But you don't
And
have to
lands on a Porsche.
exactly. But the things, let me tell you what I do avoid. I don't get into LiDAR, and I'm not trying to be everything for everybody. I'm really
Mhm.
focused on thermography. And I would recommend to your audience that whatever tool you decide you want to use, whether it's thermography or visual, or you want to do LiDAR, or you want to do XYZ, focus on that and be the best you can in your market. Because if you are, that's how you get referrals. That's why people keep
Yeah.
coming back. You can be a one-man show. You don't have to have 10 people working for you. When I get busy, I bring in guys from Internachi and I go, okay, I know what you guys can do well. You guys go do that. I'll do this. And we can take on 200,000 or 300,000 square foot, 10-story building in 3 or 4 days and do it very quickly. So, so be good at what you do and stay focused. Don't try to be everything to everybody. I guess that's
Mhm.
kind of my 2 cents.
Yeah, I agree, and what I like what you're doing is your niche is not market dependent, where you're not sitting there worried about is a building being transacted. You're finding another way to gain a revenue stream that doesn't involve transactional work. You're working for building owners, You're working for people that might manage buildings. You might even be working for contractors that need a professional to troubleshoot. I mean, those are revenue streams that you can't make up. Those are great.
Well, here in Dallas, we have property owners that own 15 or 20 high-rise buildings.
Mhm.
To get somebody up and go survey that roof on foot
Yeah,
is very expensive and it's very time consuming and it's not very accurate. They're too close to the roof. They're too close to the equipment to get that, well, I'll just call it the bird's eye view, right?
yeah,
So like there's buildings here in Dallas that are 25, 35 stories. I can go fly them in 15 minutes and map them.
yeah,
So there's opportunities to go to those building owners, the property managers, whether it's for apartment buildings or, low rise, high rise, it doesn't matter. And look at annualized contracts. Hey, I'll do all your buildings. Well, I've got deals going with those local independent school districts. I go out and I survey every roof in that school district. And the one I've got right now is they have 73 buildings, and I go survey those every 6 months. And I target their facility guys and I go, you got a problem on this roof. It's starting to develop. You can put it on your, I don't do the work, but I go out and
no,
give them kind of a punch list. And they're very thankful for that because they don't have guys just wandering around waiting for the roof to leak.
yeah,
They can get ahead
and
of
for
time.
safety too. And when you think about um, employees up on a roof, I mean, there's danger there, in the access and anything else. And so I see the benefits. So let's talk a little bit about HVAC because that's usually the the spot that you fake it till you make it type of thing. When it comes to when you first bought your first infrared camera, so let's or thermography camera. Let's talk a little bit about some of the things that you're able to help clients with HVAC.
Well, I think the biggest thing is HVA systems sit on roofs, and most of the roofs are not on concrete. They're setting up there on purlins that tend to vibrate along with the equipment. Well, what do we know about vibration? Vibration loosens up joints over time. It will cause discontinuities in TPO,
Mm-hmm.
thermoplastic olefin roofs, whether it's TPO 30 or TPO 60. Um, those roofs tend to lose their seals around the support legs of HVAC.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that I've noticed is uh, the condensate lines that run sometimes over the fabric, or many times they run under the fabric. You'll detect the leaks underneath that fabric in those lines because
Mm.
from a thermographic standpoint, they're either running hot, right? The liquid's returning, or it's cold, So those thermographic differentials cause materials to expand and contract at different rates. And that's why distribution centers are such good candidates to go do these every 6 month surveys because you'll find those uh, discrepancies in the roof. The others are reefer warehouses, refrigerated warehousing.
Mm-hmm.
You've got big ones right there in Denver. Cisco is right off of I-70. They're huge. They used to be one of my clients when I lived up there. But those big refrigerated warehouses have a tendency to have leaks over time, or they have thermographic breakdown in their insulation around their pipes and things. So you can detect this from the air. You don't have to go up there and do a walking survey to find out if the fabric around your or your insulation fabric around a pipe is starting to deteriorate. You will see it. You'll see nice little yellow lines in the middle of all the blue that says, hey,
Yeah.
that insulation's deteriorated. You need to replace it. And those things don't sound like much, but companies that size, if you're saving them 1 or 2% a year, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars for them
Yeah.
in terms of refrigeration. The other things are refrigerant leaks. I find it all the time, especially in big single pack units that sit on top of high-rise buildings. Think of the big bank buildings in downtown Denver, 35, 45 stories up
Yeah.
there. They get refrigerant leaks and that stuff leaks out and it costs money, to replace that stuff and to find those leaks and things. So don't be intimidated by the size of the building. Your tool, once you know what you're doing with it, like a drone, you can fly a drone up 1,500 feet on top of a building as long as you don't deviate from the airspace too far. You know, follow the building up, stay over the roof. You can go 400 feet over the roof, though. You don't need to go that high. Usually about 100 feet over a rooftop is more than enough to map it out. But what I find is there's just so many opportunities, and a lot of it is educating facility managers. You know, go do a couple of things for free. Go shoot some roofs at shopping centers and take it to the office and say, hey, did you know you got this problem up there? Well, once you do that once and you save them some money, guess who you're going to call?
Yeah.
And
Now,
you know, this business is repeat business, what we're doing with thermography.
that's the hope. I mean, I think every inspector's hope is to have a certain percentage of their business be repeat business. It's guaranteed. It's to say it poorly. It's guaranteed money. I mean, you can't
Well,
leave a
like what,
dentist's office without
yeah,
having an
what you said
appointment.
just a minute ago, it's not transactional. It's not just when real
Yeah,
estate changes hands. It's ongoing preventive maintenance, and that's where you want to get tied in. You know, I think schools like high schools,
yeah,
districts are amazing because they don't own just two or three buildings. They usually own hundreds of buildings, you know, across the district. Um,
yeah.
Gymnasiums and science labs, and there's all kinds of stuff that need, you know, inspection services. And guess what? Once you get on the thermography side, guess who they're going to start calling for the interior stuff?
Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely right.
subfloor plumbing leaks and things like that.
So so we're not afraid you know, as an association, we help our members. So where do you encourage inspectors to go to get started and get trained?
Well, first of all, um, stay with your association. Go to the meetings. They have you know, United Infrared's there. I mean, FLIR's there. They're all there, you know, and they all know me. I know them. I respect Peter Hopkins. He's a great guy, you know, United Infrared out of San Diego.
Hmm.
Um, I've learned a lot from him. I've learned a lot from his trainers. But I will tell you, you have to be a student of this business. You got to go to the internet. You got to go to YouTube. You got to go out there and practice, practice, practice. Shoot your panels, shoot your neighbors' panels. Look at roofs in your neighborhood. I fly, you know, where I live here in the Dallas area, I fly the neighborhood about every 3 or 4 months, and I let people know if they've got roof problems. I don't charge for it. I just do
But
that
you're
for my
practicing.
association. Well, I'm
But
practicing.
and I guess that's the truth. I mean, I always use a quote, and if you're one of my students that sat in the class, you hear me say it. Augustus Swift, the founder of Swift Eckridge, the sausage company, always says, "I too am always learning," and that's it every day. I've been in this industry for 35 years, and there's not a day that goes by that I don't learn something. And I almost wish I was still practicing. I think thermography and drones excites me, scares the devil out of me. Uh, I've owned a lot of DJIs and I've crashed a lot of DJIs long before they were so autonomous that I'm afraid to go buy another one.
Well, let me switch gears on you here a little bit and talk about some other opportunities.
Please.
I do a lot of work with farms and ranches.
Mm,
Uh, People here in Texas, for the most part, once you get out of the city, they're using septic fields. A lot of times these farms and ranches change hands and they don't know where the screed field is.
yep.
I can fly my drone over a screed field and instantly show you the grid layout of where all this effluent is going underground because of temperature differentials. And one of the things that people use me for is um, if they're putting in a system, how does it affect their stock tanks? Which way is that
Yeah.
moving underground? And that's what infrared is so good at it. It you know, it's not X-ray vision, but it can show you where that liquid is moving. And if it's moving towards your stock tank here, you want to do something. You either want to put a dam up to divert it, or you want to relocate your screed field someplace else. You find this on ranches here. A lot of our ranches here are 150, 200 years old. And
Yeah,
so the screed fields, they don't have them mapped anymore. They were built before permitting was required. They don't even know where they are. Guys don't know the difference between a gravity field and, an aerobic field or an anaerobic field. And so I go out and I help them identify those kinds of things. When they're locating paddocks, it's very important to locate a paddock so it's downhill from the water flow, not uphill from the water flow, because horses and things like that need moist, sandy loam under their hooves, not dry, hard pan under their hooves with thorns
right.
and like that. So in Colorado, you got tons of that. There's also, you've heard of the term ground truth.
I
It's
don't
used
think I have. Let's talk about that.
Ground truth is used in agriculture. So, for example, let's say you're growing 10,000 acres of sunflowers up in, Greeley, or you're growing thousands of acres of corn. There are places in your field that are too wet. There are places that are too dry.
Mhm.
Places that get too much fertilizer. There's places that don't get enough. Drones are excellent at flying those, and farmers refer to that as ground truth. So instead of having to drive out there and look around on horseback or whatever to find these areas that are problematic, you can find them by drone, identify them. And you can even, I don't have the equipment, but the bigger drones can carry spray tanks and do insecticides or fertilizer or whatever. Uh, that's not me. I'm thermographic,
Right.
but I can help farmers identify these areas and say, you got a problem here. So how you treat it depends on how big it is. They go to the ag centers and buy chemicals, or they hire somebody, crop dusters, what have you. But see, I think that's an excellent opportunity. And you've got millions and millions of acres under cultivation in Colorado, Wyoming, and around you there, Utah.
Wow. I'm an Illinois
So
farm boy, and my father was the drainage commissioner
there you
for
go.
several townships, and I remember a long time ago when the first total station came out, and we could actually shoot a section in a day when that used to take us 2 weeks to pull steel tape and everything else. And next thing you know, we're measuring a half a mile in one setup. I mean, to me, I just think of my old civil engineering father's head going, "Wow, I mean, this is something." Imagine if he was here today and saw what thermography could do, or drones could do, flying over those drainage ditches. And I could imagine in my head flying them and seeing that while it might all look dry under all of that vegetation, you can see that this area is considerably wetter than this area. So we've
Right.
probably got a spot that needs to be regraded so that it all flows perfectly down to is that's what we did. We walked ditches as a
Well,
kid.
that's what the drone does for you now. You don't have to walk it. You can program a drone. I mean, you can program a drone to fly a pattern and come back,
Yeah,
and you watch it, and 5 minutes later, you've got the answers. And
yeah,
with infrared, you also have the infrared palette, so you can see
yeah,
all these temperature variations.
yeah,
One last thing that I do use it for is, as an engineer, I design drainage systems for commercial lots as well as for, these high-end residential lots where they're doing cut and fill,
yeah,
because you've got groundwater moving. So designing French drains and storm drains is really simplistic using an infrared drone, because you can see where the groundwater is moving. You know exactly where to put those French drains and solve problems with foundation breakage and things like that. So those are just many of the things that you can do with this thing. And I know we've spent a lot of time online already, but I'm fascinated with it. I'm always going to be a student of it. Drones are getting better, infrared's getting better. Though I will tell you, with what's out there right now with infrared, you don't need 2400 DPI. If you've got 640 or better, 720, let's say, you've got more than enough information to apply to every sector we've talked about today and to do an outstanding job on it. And I think that that's so important. I mean, it's like we didn't have these tools 20 years ago. They were too expensive.
Yeah.
I remember when I was in aerospace, a handheld camera we had for bore sighting on F-16s, it's like $140,000 for this little camera that had, I think it had 220 resolution. It was real blurry and, but that was the state of art at that time,
Yeah.
and so this has changed. We have these tools today. For $5,000 or $6,000, you can buy an excellent tool and you can do it drone wise, or you can just buy a handheld camera for 12 or $1,500 and do the same thing. Drones just give you a whole different perspective. When you can look at an entire roof at one time, and I've got hundreds of images. If you ever want to see some, I'll share them with you, Rob. But I can show you how grease permeates TPO fabric in restaurants. I can show you how water that's leaking on one side of a building migrates by capillary action to the other end of that building and causes leaks. And people go, I don't know where the leak's coming from. They can't find it, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can go up and fly the roof and you find it in 10 minutes. So
that. Thank you for that, and I appreciate the offer. And
I always make myself available if people have a problem. They can send me
Mhm.
photos and help them interpret what they're looking at. And but, we get better as a group if we spread
Yeah,
our knowledge nationwide or worldwide. This isn't like it's my secret and I own Dallas. It's like I want to train anybody that's willing to do
yep,
it because there's thousands and thousands of buildings here.
yeah, and as you said, there's tens of thousands and millions of acres, and there's and it's just not Dallas. I mean, it's the whole world, and I've had arguments with people going, my market's too small. There's not enough commercial buildings to sustain a business, and I stand back going, then there's other ways to run a business and not be transactional. And you've proved that, Drew.
You
And
know,
thank
you know,
you.
you're right, because commercial doesn't mean necessarily an edifice. It's not just a hotel. And by the way, I do a lot of hotels, but it's not just a building. Commercial means people that are in the business of doing it. Look at all the machine shops. Look at all the
Yeah,
assembly buildings. How about the food pressing preparation plants, the Archer Daniel Midlands, the
yeah,
people that are driving those live bottom trucks? You know how many people need infrared scans on live? You know what a live bottom truck is? Ones that have the
yeah,
conveyor on the bottom.
yes,
So the sugar beet industry, which is huge in Colorado, or it used to be,
yep,
and in Minnesota and places like this, we use infrared to go underneath there and look for problems where the rollers and the drive systems are starting to jam and causing that, you catch that before it becomes a maintenance problem. Infrared is truly a spectacular tool to use. It opens up all kinds of doors.
yes, I agree. Thank you, Drew, so much for taking some time with me today. I know this is truly building your business when you can learn a craft and learn a subset of an industry and build direct revenue from it. And I'm looking forward to hearing more from you, Drew. Thank you so much.
My appreciation to you too for sponsoring this today. You do a good job, Rob. I watch your videos, I do. And I
Thank
learned
you.
from my number is only 3 digits on CCPIA. So I've been around for a while listening and learning. So I appreciate your time.
I
Thanks so much.
appreciate yours as well.